Hey everybody, a question I've had a few times lately is what are braided brake lines? And if I get asked a question a few times, I tend to make a video on it and add it to my tips for new riders playlist. If you're looking at getting a bike or you want to know more about bikes or mechanics or licenses or anything, check out my playlists, check out my videos. I've covered so much stuff to help you from getting a bike through all the different licenses up until maintenance and all sorts of stuff like that. Please do check out that playlist. Subscribe if you're new here and like the video if you find it useful. Anyway, first thing I need to mention is these are Hell braided brake lines which Hell sent to me for a bike build I'm currently doing on my XJ6. But before I use these on the bike, I thought I'd make a video and explain this, answering that question. It's in fact that build that led to people saying, well, what are braided brake lines? So for full disclosure, Hell sent me these, but this isn't about Hell lines, this is about braided brake lines in general. So, first things first, how do you tell the difference between a braided brake line and a standard one? Well, it's quite easy. I'll show you close up. So your standard brake lines are made of a nitrile rubber. They're quite fat, although they are very flexible and squidgy. They normally have striations, long straight lines down them. And yeah, it is a standard rubber brake hose. The braided line gets its name from the fact that it has braided steel wires wrapped all the way around it that's then covered in plastic. You can also see that this is much thinner and not quite as flexible. So, standard rubber hose, braided line, not difficult to tell the difference between them. So that answers the question of what are braided brake lines and how do you tell the difference between them and standard ones. Now's the question, which is, well, why are they better? I'm sure you've heard that, oh yes, braided brake lines are better than standard brake lines. Well, I can explain a few reasons as to that. So let's start with a simple explanation, if you don't know this, of how motorcycle brakes work. So you have your brake lever in your right hand, okay? That lever is connected to a piston. That squeezes. This tube, brake line, is full of brake fluid, which is a hydraulic fluid. It squeezing that forces the fluid, or should we say, it doesn't force the fluid, it puts pressure on the fluid down the tube, which then acts on your brake pads through the pots and in the calipers of the brakes, which squeezes your brake disc itself. So you squeeze here and you get that doing there. It's basically just a way to transfer energy. Okay, if you imagine this is a standard line, so this is the rubber of the outside of it. You've got your lever this end and you've got your brake disc on this end with the calipers. So when you put pressure with the lever on the piston, the fluid inside pressurizes, and that causes pressure to go outwards in all directions equally. If you want to know more about that, check out my video, How Do Motorcycle Brakes Work? So what can happen when you're braking using standard lines with the big thick walls is that the pressure actually causes the tube to expand. You can actually watch the hoses when you squeeze the brake flexing. Now obviously if this is warmer it's going to be a bit softer. Generally I think nitrile becomes a bit softer when it's warmer, but the point is it expands and you lose some of that pressure you're trying to transfer through to the brakes in just expanding the hose. Now with a braided line you basically have a tube inside that is then wrapped in braided steel and then there is plastic over the top of that. So the hose itself is actually much smaller. I'll measure the two now. Just zero this out. Okay, so the standard brake line looks about 10 mil. Yeah, 10.5 mil roughly. Okay. The braided line is only 7 mil. So it's only about a 3 mil difference, but if you're trying to run this through a bike, it actually can be a lot easier if it's thinner. But obviously they're not quite as flexible, so you have to get the lengths correct. So with the braided lines with their thicker walls that resist expanding, you get more pressure getting down the line towards the brakes, and that's why people say that you get better brakes from braided lines. I don't think it's actually going to increase your overall braking force too much. I mean, yeah, okay, it's going to basically account for how much force it takes to stretch this hose out a bit. But what it does do is it changes the feel of the brakes, because when you've got flex in your hose, when you pull your brake, you're going to feel a lot of mushiness, you know, a lot of pull, and the brakes are coming on, but it doesn't seem to be very linear, as it were, like they're not very well connected. You pull harder, and yeah, they do brake more, but it's not like a sudden jump. So when you're using the braided hoses, you get more of an immediate feel, because you don't have any of that flex in the hose to make up for, which improves braking performance and feel. But more so with the feel, in my opinion, this is something I noticed, is the fact that I think because the fluid in the lines is more directly sort of related to the lever, and the brake pads are more related to each other, you can actually feel the brakes through the lever better. Like when you're pulling them on, you get a more of an immediate jab, and you do need to be careful that you don't jab your brakes too much with braided lines, because whereas the rubber lines might allow you to do that and make up for a bit of that, you will really get a lot more brakes more immediately. So, you know, go easy to start with. It's not that huge of a difference, but just go easy. So as the fluid, you know, is a two-way street, it's just pressure in all directions, I think you can actually feel the brakes grabbing and the feedback from them more sort of through sort of feeling of like vibrations maybe even. It just improves the brakes and makes them feel a lot better. That's basically what they're for. And the main benefit is that they don't swell, and they should actually last longer than standard brake lines, because over time that flexing causes them to become looser and looser and more squidgy. Not the same as having an air bubble in your line. As I say, I've got a video talking about how the motorcycle brakes work, and that explains air bubbles and why you want to get rid of them. But there you go. That should explain to you the very basics of what braided brake lines are, how to spot them, and why they are an improvement over the stock rubber lines. As I say, if you found this video useful, I'd appreciate a thumbs up on it. Subscribe if you're new here, and if you really want to help support this channel, please consider joining my Patreon. I really would appreciate it. There are many benefits to that, including being a member of my Discord. Just lately we've been playing quite a bit of Ride 3. It's been good fun. Anyway, until the next one, where hopefully I will be doing work on my XJ6, fitting these. I'm just waiting on a part at the moment. Catch you next time.